Welcome to the RL Canning Tech Perspectives podcast, where we explore the latest trends in IT with expert perspectives and practical advice to help you prepare for what's next. In this episode, we discuss our experience at NextThink's Experience Event in Boston. Let's dive in.
I thought on this episode, we would talk about the DEX and our experience at NextThink's Experience, because I know I came out of it with a little bit different perspective. I knew DEX was a good tool for hardware-based refreshes for large organizations. It could be used for employee sentiment and surveying. It was kind of for those organizations that were much more mature on their journey and of significant scale to get value from it. And I left this first session just with a very different perspective of how the number of use cases with NextThink, as well as just the access it gave you to the endpoint. And I thought that was pretty powerful. So I thought we'd just talk about kind of our experience there and share some of the observations.
Our experience at Experience. Well, first off, I think we should start with great event. Props to the NextThink team. I mean, that's a big 2 weeks for them. I think they do an Experience event in Boston, but the week before they were all in London. So props to them. I know it's a busy time for them, but just want to give them their props. Say great event. I found it really interesting. So before going in, obviously, as NextThink partners, I'm familiar with it, but the term I always heard was, that proactive monitoring. But I found myself while listening to some of the keynote speakers thinking about the silent sufferers, you guys you'd call them, within organizations. And I think everyone is kind of guilty of this, at least to a certain extent, of there are these maybe minor issues that employees deal with on a day-to-day basis, and they just don't want to go through the process of reaching out to IT to fix it. They'll just deal with it. I know myself, I have this pop-up that keeps showing up every day, and I just hit deny. I have to deny 4 times before it goes away, but I deal with it every day, and I have not reached out to anyone to fix it. I just deal with it for 2 minutes every day, and that's a small example, but there are plenty of those across organizations, right?
Yeah.
And I think NextThink, that's a kind of a key selling point for them, is it gives you visibility into who's struggling with kind of these, maybe not as minor as mine, but even in my scenario, what issues is your device running into? It was making me think, I was reading this book a few years ago. I cannot remember the title of the book, or actually, to be honest with you, what the book is about. But the story the author was saying was he was telling a story either of himself or his friend never created an email signature on his email application. So every time he wrote an email, he would manually type his email signature. And it was talking about the psychology of change. And he's like, the guy just didn't know how to set his email signature. So he dealt with that. He was like, the extra 10 seconds it took, you add that up over a year. It's like, how much time did this guy spend creating his email signature? Kind of a goofy example, but that is the key selling point of NextThink. And then the other takeaway I had, also from listening to a keynote speaker who has NextThink and has used it, was the capability to monitor and enact change within your IT environment. So I think he used the example of you're releasing a new application, a new process. Obviously, if you release a new application and it's just not running correctly on devices, that's going to get captured, but also being able to drive adoption within that new application. So those were kind of the 2 big takeaways that I came out of from the experience.
Yeah, I'll respond to the second piece you dropped there first, because I agree. I think the ability to use it, and there were a number of keynotes or speakers that highlighted this benefit. It's not just for IT, or it's not just for surveying. How do you appreciate your IT team, or how is Teams working for you, or those kind of standard boring IT surveys that folks may get with it. HR, SAP rollouts, ERP changes, laptop upgrades, like everything that you're doing that impacts that end user experience in their day-to-day, survey about it, ask about it, use it as a verification and validation tool to understand and be certain that the changes and the investments your organization's making are having a positive impact on your end users, because that's really what it's all about, or at least as a key element of any change that you're doing. There were so many use cases of it going beyond IT, bringing in those other teammates. And then the first piece you mentioned, which was the data, the insights, the proactivity. I mean, that's been there for a while. It is a huge value add. I think that's usually where we sell it, is we sell it to the IT geeks, the ones that really want to get in there and understand the data at the endpoint. There's so much data and insight that NextThink gives you around that that from a troubleshooting perspective or any of those IT engineering folks, they always love it. And that's a huge selling point. I do like the idea of the proactiveness and the fact that if someone's having a challenge, you can kind of see and address that proactively. Most interested in the way that it's going to go around opening up some of those insights and that data to the end users. Right now, that's been a huge selling point and value add to the IT folks behind the scenes. But to me, I think that's going to be the future. And we saw a little bit of that experience of getting an AI agent or getting a chat experience to where end users like you and me can say, hey, what's my DEX score? Or I'm having this issue. Help me diagnose that or help me see how I stack up against other systems in the environment. Like, is this a
Mhm.
me problem or is this more of a systemic problem that other people are having? That'll be an interesting thing on how they open that up and get it outside of just the IT folks.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really a tool where I can see. I'm not going to sit here and say the normal employee is going to get excited about this IT tool, but
My
I
DEX
can
score.
kind of see them maybe getting into it a little bit more than some of the other tools we talked about. Like when you say, "What's my DEX score?" A normal employee doesn't really know, probably doesn't know what that means, nor do they necessarily care too much. But it would be interesting if they had that capability to actually be able to see because it impacts their productivity. Where maybe there's, like I said, issues going on that you just don't know about. You're like, if these got fixed, my productivity would increase. So it's interesting that you say that.
Well, one of the speakers touched on that. He talked about the whole gamification and that they made it kind of an organization wide initiative to improve their DEX score by the end of the
Mhm.
calendar year. And, saw these step changes in terms of their experience by implementing improvements and modifications that kind of got everybody to rally around it. So I do think that it more than other tools, the opportunity for gamification and getting folks interested in it is there.
Well, can I ask you what goes into, can you kind of explain the inputs into the DEX score? I've seen, dashboards from Nexthink, obviously, and I think there's the technology score, the sentiment score. Could you kind of break down what the DEX score actually entails?
Yeah, I honestly don't know what it entails. The biggest thing that I will share, though, from just the conversations that I had at experience was that folks provided the feedback to Nexthink. I'm hoping that they, address this in future updates, but that it was rather rigid. There is not a lot of ability for you to customize the deck score for your business and or for various teams, right? The performance thresholds and expectations of your accounting team or your finance team may be dramatically different than your web developers or application developers. So there isn't a lot of ability right now to go in and customize that or align it to your business. I'm hoping that is a shift, but I don't know what makes it up or can't tell you the actual drivers right now. But it is something I'm hoping they give a few more knobs to the end users to be able to adjust.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the being able to kind of change your monitoring based on teams is huge because teams, me on the marketing team, I use different tools than our engineering, our architect
Yeah.
team. So yeah, that's huge. I mean, it's going to be so useful introducing new applications, especially with all of these new AI tools that are coming out, and organizations that want to implement all these tools, being able to use Nexthink to, again, not only monitor kind of how effective they are, but the adoption rate of these AI tools, right?
That I'm shaking my head because I mean, I literally just got off a call where we were having the same conversation. This organization was struggling with what do I do? I have some AI in Salesforce, I have some AI in Copilot. We're dabbling in this, dabbling in that. Um, Number of different pilots, but nothing tangible and nothing that is improving or offering an ROI on my investment. And so I do think AI Drive is what Nexthink called it. That ability to get in there and assess, like you said, adoption, but also what's being used in the environment. Because I think those to me are challenges that everyone I've spoken to has today. One is they thought they made all the right decisions and then people don't adopt or use it, right? There's that training and adoption and resistance to adoption of AI of, hey, I'm gonna train it out of a job, right? The second piece is controlling the use of other LLMs or technology. So ChatGPT, Grok, like one of the companies I spoke to, they knew they had about 600 folks that had accessed ChatGPT in a given day, and it wasn't an approved AI for them to be leveraging.
Yeah.
And so that's AI Drive is supposed to help you with managing and controlling that because I just think those are everyone we're talking to is having those challenges. So we're using it now internally at RL Canning, and I hope that it aligns with the hype or it addresses all of the challenges that they highlighted as part of the experience.
The one, I believe there was a keynote speaker that spoke on, it's NextThink Spark, correct? Is that what they're calling their AI
Correct. Yep.
tool?
That's
That's the one
their
that I
AI
missed.
agent. Yeah.
Yeah, agent, excuse me. That's the one that I missed that I did not attend. But I did want to ask, were you able to check that out? That
Yeah, there were two things that stood out to me on it. One was the promise seems great, like opening up to the end user. I think the execution is where I struggle, because very similar to many other AI applications we see out there, or folks that are building it into their platform, I only see that AI being able to answer end user questions, right? Or endpoint questions. That's where it knows and what it has access to. But are you really going to make Nexthink Spark your central UX for all of your end users? Like, is that going to be their AI chat experience? I don't know. I think it's likely going to be Copilot or some other engine integrated into Teams or Slack or something else to kind of meet your end users at where they're used to collaborating. So the promise, the idea is good, but they showed that it does integrate with ServiceNow. It does integrate with Copilot and Teams. So I think that they're doing it the right way. They're going to unlock the access and ability to use that endpoint insight data and performance metrics and all of that, and allow you to make that more of a seamless AI experience. So that's promising. But the second piece that stood out to me about it was everyone kind of seemed a little burned out on the whole agents. Like, there were a number of folks that said, "Oh, yeah, I saw it, but God, do I need another agent in Teams? Or Teams is already so bloated. I don't know that I need something else in there, right? We already got 3 other agents. Everyone's using ChatGPT." So I did think that I got the sense that there is kind of this just burnout of like, oh, you have another AI agent that's going to be released. But I think that's good for us, and our perspective is we can come in and kind of guide some of these organizations on how to prioritize, how to select, how to roadmap out the right way to tackle AI, so they do it with intention and don't just fall into some of these solutions, because we're still at the forefront. It's going to continue to proliferate and expand.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned all the agents. I feel like my teams, with Teams especially, once you add in conversations, the Teams channels themselves, and then the agents, I'm like, it's getting hard for me to even navigate the platform. It's getting a little frustrating. So
Yeah.
I hear what you were hearing.
With Viva Engage and everything on the left-hand nav, it's just getting overwhelming.
Forgot about Viva Engage. Well, I think one other interesting point that I noticed, and is just kind of the talk track around Nexthink, is like why the actual experience score matters more than, I guess, just call it the device performance. And they would talk about how they were trying to ask the question of why does monitoring the actual experience matter so much more than just the performance on the device. So I wanted to ask you, in terms of what we've done with our clients, why is it so important to not only just monitor that individual device performance? Why is it important to even track employee sentiment?
Yeah, it's much more flexible. I feel like most organizations know if they were to roll out something and it was to consume all the disk space or use all the resources in a laptop, what have you, they would probably know that and address it and be aware of it. But if you do a change, or you release a tool, or you do an initiative, and all of your employees have a strong distaste for the way that has impacted their day-to-day lives, and they're silent suffering, like you mentioned before, or they're just dealing with these issues, you may never know unless you have something like Nexthink and a DEX solution to help with that. That was one thing that was eye-opening to me, was the number of use cases that were around everything else in the environment. We're doing this, we're doing that, and we're using Nexthink as a litmus test or as a baseline to say, okay, what is my experience before? And have I moved that ball forward because of X, Y, and Z initiatives? Or did this initiative should have had this outcome that we entered into it with a desire to achieve? Did we achieve that? Did it have that? And whether that's using campaigns and surveys to your end users, or that's actually baselining things like DEX score and raw performance metrics, I think that using it for all of those changes was again eye-opening to me. And so I think any leaders that are leveraging it or looking to leverage it more than they are today, go and talk to your other teams, talk to your HR, talk to other areas, and see how you may be able to benefit from it. Did you get a chance to talk to anybody about why they attended?
No, I never asked.
That was I asked a lot of people, hey, it was my first Nexthink experience. And so I said, hey, have you been here before? Is this a new thing? And a lot of them were new. A few had ran into had definitely been there before. But a lot of them referenced the Gartner report that said, hey, 80% or 78% or somewhere around that of organizations or enterprises need to have a DEX solution by 2028. I think is it. I may be misquoting that, but effectively
Hmm.
they referenced, hey, when Gartner speaks, people listen, or yeah, we saw the Gartner report, and so we're taking DEX much more seriously and seeing if it's something that's going to be a good fit for our organization. And so there were a lot of folks that referenced that, which I just thought was interesting.
So the people that I talked to that might have been, it was a lot of people's first time there, and it was most people's maybe second or third time. So we at RL Canning, our NextThink architect has actually been going for 7 years, and he's like been trying to get us to come. We finally went. We're like, this is great. He's like, I've been trying to tell you guys this.
Yeah.
So, but it was interesting that a lot of the organizations attending who are newer to NextThink, it's actually sounded like they were having a lot of difficulties when it came to the implementation. Now, I can't speak to what those specific technical issues were that they were having. I overheard our NextThink architects talking with them, but I guess it led me to think about, how difficult is it to actually implement the tool within your organization?
Yeah, it is not easy to do it right, I think. And we in the RL Canning history, I mean, we've had customers that we've deployed it, they haven't signed up for a managed service or that ongoing care and feeding, and then ultimately they moved away from it and sunset the platform because they weren't seeing the value, because it does take constant care and feeding and optimization. It is not a set it and forget it type platform. It's a way of you, like we've talked about, using it as a catalyst for change and validating the impact to your end user experience of other changes enterprise wide. And so if you're not A, understanding that, or B, willing to commit to that for NextThink, it's probably not, you're not at the maturity level to warrant it, because it does take a lot of effort. So we have a couple of tiered managed services that we offered around it to kind of meet the clients at their point of need. Some offer them much more administrative rights and they can run with it and use us as more of a backstop, that phone a friend type model, or we can do turnkey and where we fully manage it. But it still requires, 15 to 20 hours a month of effort to maintain it and do the campaigns and get the value out of it. So it's not turnkey for sure, but often nothing worth doing is going to be that easy.
That is true.
The other thing you mentioned, around implementation, is we see this on many platforms. It's not just NextThink, so don't take this as a NextThink specific challenge, but it's just kind of the plateau effect. And I heard this from our architect and product owner, but from other folks at the NextThink experience, that a lot of folks get in and kind of hit those quick wins, right? Hit those things that you and I before going knew about, of, okay, hardware-based refresh, meet a savings number there. They get some basic campaigns going and some surveying and feel good about that and get a DEX score baseline or even maybe show an improvement. And then the other big one was they launch Amplify, which is NextThink's browser extension that allows it to integrate with your ITSM or ticketing platform for your service desk, and allows them to quickly, we have a video out on YouTube if you want to check it out, we can link it, but it allows you to go through and without having to integrate and do all the APIs and behind the scenes configuration, you can allow your service desk resources to gain access to all that insight and data into the endpoint to aid in their troubleshooting. How's the performance? How does it stack up? Things like that. So a lot of folks do those items, a couple of campaigns, hardware-based refreshes, Amplify, and they go, okay, I'm good, right? They kind of hit a plateau of, they get some goodness and they just get comfortable and say, all right, this is enough, right? This is what I thought that I would get out of it. And I think that's a huge mistake. And that's where we spend more time with customers, is saying, okay, what can we put together in terms of a roadmap to say, where can we take it, right? What other businesses or organizations within your business, what can we do around onboarding? What can we do around integrating it with platforms like ServiceNow to do a true zero touch deployment for onboarding and survey that user once they get to their 60 or 90 days, to actually prompt them through chat if we see they haven't accessed the employee landing page or accessed the necessary documentation they need to, and send out reminders, right? And so again, the access to the data at the endpoint and the ability to utilize that with other workflows or platforms like ServiceNow, that's a huge unlock.
I mean, yeah, getting all of those platforms integrated together, I feel like it's just the utopia. But I know we've done it for quite a few clients.
Yep, you got to bring all those various elements together. I think that's what it's all about. Anybody can deploy each of these individually, but it's about the synergies you get by connecting them all together. And that really not only unlocks the automation, but with all the AI happening, the more you can give it, the more context it has and access it has, the more it can do for your organization.
Well, Well, I don't think we missed anything from experience. Short event, but I feel like I was there for a week in a good way. We left there. I was like, man, I feel like I've been here for forever. But any other topics from, I guess, NextThink itself that you think IT leaders should know that we haven't covered?
Yeah, one thing that is a little bit different that we're doing is Amplify is great. I think it's a great solution. It's clearly one that's been adopted by many organizations. I mean, I think everybody I talked to or I asked about it, they had at least gotten to that point where they've implemented it. So huge win, great idea by NextThink. But as part of that, they actually have kind of abandoned their integration and their applications on the ServiceNow store to integrate those two. And I think that's actually an area where we're leaning into that more of, yes, there's one thing to empower your service desk, and that's a quick win and a value add. But if you want to fully automate and you want to bypass the service desk and you want to deflect that issue from even hitting one of your resources in the service desk, that's where still a true integration is the right path with ServiceNow, to where you can actually orchestrate actions. Or what we're leveraging it for is the toast messages, the pop-up messages NextThink can do, to where we can perform a task outside of NextThink through ServiceNow or through integration with Intune or other actions, but still maintain a positive end user experience by updating them throughout different phases of that process so that they know, hey, this is still being tracked, your request is being addressed, here's the point that it's at. That communication can go a really long way. And so we're actually leaning into the integration with ServiceNow and have established that for a few customers, including we kind of drink our own champagne internally when it comes to that integration. This was one of the primary use cases that I heard that wasn't necessarily a keynote, but in just conversations I was having, folks were referencing JAR in the benefits enrollment process and using NextThink to adopt benefits and to see and say, hey, you could run campaigns on, you're one of this many people who haven't signed up or taken this benefit that we offer at this organization, right? So you can drive different efforts around that. There were a lot of folks who were partnering with their HR teams and NextThink to do some interesting ways of engaging with the end users and making sure they were enrolling in platforms there.
I think that's a really interesting use case because that's something I think employee benefits get so complicated and you have to review it every single year. I think that's such an interesting use case.
That's the summary of our experience at Experience.
Experience at Experience. Thank you, guys.